Right, so let's get into it. When we talk about online audience engagement tools, we're basically looking at them in terms of providing a way for audience members to participate in online, usually live delivery, but Mentimeter is one of a select group of tools that also has prospect of being used asynchronously, which means that we can put it places and get students to participate with it even when we're not around. And it is great for that also, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Sometimes the vendors like to talk about these tools providing energy boosts for students. I'm not entirely sure about that. I think maybe it's a way of increasing efficacy and engagement, certainly. I don't know about energy. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's Europeans getting the wrong word. I don't know. We'll see how we go with that. Um, it is certainly a great way of getting ideas, feedback, opinions, etc., in quickly and easily, and certainly making the people that are there with you not feel like they're either baggage or just passive, not really part of the experience when you're with them in person. In the context of learning and teaching, this has often come up in recent years when we talk about didactic delivery, so lecture delivery, for example, someone up the front orating at a group of passive listeners, so to speak. And in online spaces, certainly since COVID and even before then, that has often ended up being the case. People just shifted the things that we were doing face to face into online spaces like Zoom, etc., and then wondered why people weren't turning up to the live um, lectures, workshops, etc. Certainly when we record them, that's a response that we often get. If I'm not involved, why would I turn up in person? It's a way of providing alternate channels for getting either feedback or needs identified if people need things. Certainly when we run in Zoom in our Bright Space workshops are a good example. We've got chat going, we've got Q&A going, we've got usually sometimes there's another forum going in Teams. Using tools like Menti and others, whether synchronously or asynchronously, provides yet another channel for people to get involved. And as I mentioned, underneath timing, you've got the opportunity to use them either live with people or before and after. All right. I think the best way for us to start with this, before I start taking you through the build tool set, is to give you some Mentis to, to play around with so we can see some examples of how they work. And I've got some links that I'll give you as well. I will point out once we get into the build interface that the language that Mentimeter uses in terms of their building objects, they talk about slides because it's a slide-based building tool that you build activities within each slide. You build activities within those, and responses from participants are referred to as voices. So when you see that language used, that's what they're getting at. Slides that we build our activities within, you can build one activity within each slide. A lot of people will only ever use a one slide type activity and just give a different link each time to different activities. Anyway, we'll get to that. Let me start by giving you a hyperlink to Menti. Jump into that. It should open in something that looks a little like this. And what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to start responding to these questions, submit your responses, and then move through. But while you're doing it, keep in mind, have a look also at the fact that the format of these different activities will change as you move through. That's what I'm hoping. So I'll start responding at the same time as well. So how confident am I in engaging people? Fine. Let's say I'm not particularly confident. Submit. 3 divas, rating divas. Ooh, Aretha, Beyonce. I
Are we
suppose.
supposed to be filling this in as well, or just you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Fill it in, please, Andrea.
I can't. I click on it and there's nothing. Like
It's
it's,
it's not allowing you to participate. How about everybody else?
oh, I'm supposed to follow that link, right?
Yes, please. The link in the chat that I've put in the
Yes,
Zoom.
sorry, my bad.
No, that's all right. Sorry, I probably should
I'm
have made that
clicking on your screen here thinking nothing's happening.
The screen's not working. Yeah, no, no.
I think I put
It's
not confident at all after
that's
that.
Maybe it'll change by the last slide, you know. Okay, got some divas. Third one I've got here is identifying three things, but it's open response that I'm bringing to a desert island. Books. Oh, wow. A towel would be handy. Cocktails. Sure, let's do that. Submit. This is asking about audience engagement as well, but it's traffic lights in this case, red, orange, green, etc. Keep talking. And then lastly, we've got a priority type tool, which is using a Likert scale or dragging type. Hey, Jen.
Hey,
Good morning.
I'm being a typical student. I'm coming in late.
Yeah, right.
So where's the Mentimeter thingy link?
There you go. I'll
Ah,
drop it
there
in
you
the
go.
chat. It was there a
Thank
second
you.
ago. Yep.
Thank you.
Just work through those. All right. So I'll drag my thing to some various places here. But what we had in that spot was really 4 or 5 different activity types that are very quick to throw together within Menti. And you've accessed those by me giving you what's called an invite link. It's also called a voting link sometimes, but it's the mechanism through which your participants can engage. And it's allowed you to work through each of those. The other important bit of information with Mentimeter is that we need a results link, which will show us the page where that information from the participants is going in. And I'm bringing this up. I get access to this link as, I guess, the creator of the activity. And
Is
these
it always the
outputs,
same
go
link?
ahead.
Is it
Um,
always the same link?
for the
Results link?
results, it'll be the same for that particular deck of activities. This will make more sense to you when I show you the back end of Mentimeter and
Okay,
how we build them. But
I'll just
um,
shush now.
no, not at all. Not at all. Keep asking. It will be the same link for that set of activities that you've built. If you create another presentation with different activities in it, it'll be a different link. So it does change depending on if you've created a different set of activities. The first one that we made, pretty basic, multiple choice effectively, and you can see the results have come in, and the format I had for these was just a bar graph. Down the bottom right-hand corner, I can see how many people completed the activity, bottom right-hand corner. I can move through these to have a look. Next one, again, we had a number of choices, but this time round I introduced images into how you could vote. If you remember the pictures of the divas, but also the way the results are displayed includes those images on top. So you get I suppose, a slightly more engaging way of presenting that information. And it's presenting the results as percentages. You'll notice that as well. So that's slightly changed. Good to see that Aretha has come out on top yet again, just saying. Next. Now the results for this one, where you got to put in free text, it's populated a word cloud. And as these results come in, they will automatically be created on the spot. Arguably, the word cloud within Mentimeter is the most popular that's used at CSU. A lot of the time in teaching and learning, word clouds are used for lots of different reasons, but it's because of how easy it is to create. Literally, you identify your prompt question. What are you bringing? And that's just about it. You're either deciding if you want an image for stimulus or not. But other than that, it's maybe one of the easiest activity types to create. And the more that people respond with a particular answer, the larger the words are going to get, the way that word clouds normally work. If you're ever watching one of these as the students start putting their answers, it's quite entertaining to watch as well. It's dynamic on the spot and it just starts flipping, rotating and getting bigger and bursting and bursting. And the more responders that you get in that space at the same time, the more fun it can be to watch. And we had an image as well on the side here as another type of stimulus there. All right. Then we had the traffic light response. So it was asking the same question as the first one, but instead of just kind of your bars kind of showing which one was the highest, the information is then presented both in percentages, but also using this traffic light idea of, well, there's a problem here. We need to look at something. Actually, no, we're fine. And this one telling me I can keep talking. Brilliant. last but not least, we had a ranking activity where people got to select across a scale how they felt against a number of different value propositions. So it's a like it scale type tool where I got to define what the different ends of the continuum are. So what's not a priority on one end of the continuum and what is a priority for me. So there's no alternative. And in this case, people have indicated a range of things like chairs important, Wi-Fi, adequate desk space. I mean, that all makes a lot of sense. But we've asked effectively 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different questions within this activity, and getting people to giving them a range of choice. So it's expanding the possibilities when you use this type of activity.
Lockie, do you mind just holding your mouse over one of them so I can see? So the numbers that say like 2 and 1, does that mean the number of respondents
That's
that
correct.
put their marker there?
Absolutely. That's
Okay, cool,
exactly what
thanks.
it means. Yep. So it has those kind of bumps where it's showing kind of the averages and responses, etc., in terms of where most people were responding. So I'm guessing, yeah, there's 4 there, for example, for that one out of the 6 people in here. But it also identifies on the continuum what I'm going to say average has worked out to be. Maybe they'll use a word like median, but yeah, it's about the average. Okay, so we've just gone through 5 Mentimeter activity types. And what that means at this point, I'll ask the question, I suppose, firstly, was it relatively easy for you to engage with all of those and work through them quickly? Yep. So that means in terms of how much time it's going to take for your audience to engage with it, not a lot in a live sense, but also each one of those, could you see that potentially each of them might be used either as an icebreaker or a way of launching into other types of conversations around some of that information? Okay, and that's what online engagement tools, audience engagement tools, are generally meant to accomplish, is give you talking points and a way to broaden the conversation. They're also referred to as, or they were referred to as clicker software, maybe about 10, 15 years ago. So if you've heard that term before, they even came up with these little handheld devices that people had once upon a time where they could click on their responses to update slides. But we've moved well and truly beyond that now with everything, with everyone having mobile phones and things like that. All right, I think it's time we jumped into the Mentimeter system itself so we could look at building. And at that point in time, I'm going to drag something into the chat for you as well, which is a quick guide for Mentimeter. It's a document that will allow you to walk all the way through. Did I already give you that? Introduction to Mentimeter? No. What folder are we living in? Ah, the desktop. That's why. There we go. So you can keep that for your reference, but that document will take you from signing up for Mentimeter right through to building all of the different activity types. You don't have to look at it now, definitely, but it's certainly worth having as a reference. Okay, look, Mentimeter starts at the address mentimeter.com. And what I'm going to do is access that through a browser that I never use, so you can see what it looks like when you first go in. Okay, so when you first, okay, when you first go into Mentimeter, you've got an opportunity to either log in or sign up. Either one of these is going to get you to the same place as a CSU staff member. So I'm going to hit login. And what you're going to see down the bottom here is an option for single sign-on, SSO. Don't bother with any of this other stuff up here and email addresses and other tools. We use single sign-on, which means that we're going to be able to use our work logins. Once that goes in, it asks for the organization name. So we've got Charles Sturt University. How are we doing with that? Yep, and then it brings us to a CSU page, at which point we can use our work logins and it will take us into the tool. All right, I'm going back to Chrome because I hate this browser. All right. When we get into Mentimeter, like the home page, if you've built presentations before, this is going to be relatively empty, except for a number of templates down the bottom, you can toggle this off if you don't like it, but basically it might give you some ideas about different activity types that you'll see down the bottom. But this, your homepage really is your launching point for creating new presentations yourself. But the first thing I want to point out to you on the left-hand side here is two different areas, one called private and my presentations, and the other one called workspace and Charles Sturt University presentations. The difference that we have here is that if you start in here, and it does open within Charles Sturt University's presentations by default, any that you create in here will be accessible to anyone else, any other staff at the uni. Now, for some people working within teams and they want them all to be having access to the same mentees, etc., this is fantastic. And they'd probably come in here, create new folders for their teams, and then start building presentations in those folders. No problem. I want to take you through from the private side, from your own individual mentees first. And if you decide that there's value in you creating them in these shared spaces, great, go ahead and do that. But Jen, you're muted. Nice hand gestures though.
You've got a list view. For some reason, I've got all these bloody
Boxes.
big boxes. How do I?
Over here on the right-hand side, can you see where my mouse is? Far right.
Yep. Thank
Grid
you.
view versus list view. I can't stand the grid view. It drives me nuts. Excellent question. All right, so I'm starting with my presentations. As I mentioned, I can create folders to which to organize my individual Mentimeter presentations within them if I need to. So I'll do that today. Special PD, oops, it just called it special, that'll do. I'm going to go into the special folder. There's nothing in there at the moment, so now I'm going to start building a new presentation. All right, now we're now in what we would call the build interface within Mentimeter, and we start, this is where our language is important. We work within slides. On each of the slides is an activity. I've got one slide over here on the left. If I want to add additional slides, I can hit new slide. And straight away, as soon as I'm doing it, it's asking me, what do I want to use the slide for? At which point there are lots and lots of different activity types. Let me zoom in a little. If I can. No, it won't let me. Hang on. I zoomed a little too much. New slide. Here we go. So I'm offered choices like multiple choice, a word cloud, open response questions, a scale. So our like it scale type question that we made before with our home office. That's a scale. A ranking activity, which allows the audience to drag which ones they want at the top and which ones they want towards the bottom. So a number of options, and you reorganize them based on your priorities. Some gimmicky ones, guess the number. I don't know what I'd use that for. 100 points is interesting. It's basically asking you to prioritize with number values how you would split up a number of resources. So if you said I had 10 things, it'll each give me the ability to a participant to allocate a number of points out of 100 to each of those things. So maybe one of them gets 100 and the rest get 0, or each of them, 8 of them get 1 point and the rest of them get 92, that sort of thing. It's a resource division type activity. But I'm going to start with a word cloud, most basic. So on this one slide in my activity deck, I've only got the one. I'm going to build a word cloud. Up here, I've got the opportunity to name my presentation. So distinct name for presentation. There we go, up here. Now the word cloud is actually already live at this point. The moment that you click on create new presentation, it's live. It's in the web waiting to be accessed. And it looks like this. So this is giving me a preview of the live activity. There's not much in there at the moment. But if we move across to the right, we can start adding in other information. Do you want more of a description to sit underneath the title? That would be a meta description, at which point you could put that in, a bit more context. If you want to change the actual title of the word cloud, I would be looking here under this section that it calls it question. So how do I, whoops, How do I feel about 22 degrees in Bathurst? Which is what I'm getting today. So that's my word cloud that's going to be going into the live activity, and people would then be able to respond. You can add in a longer description underneath, which would give you a bit of a paragraph type aspect. Then if I wanted to add images to my word cloud to sit on the side, I could do that as well. That's my content basically sorted already for this word cloud activity. But there are some more options over here on the right-hand side. If we click on design, you can change the layout and the theming for your activities. This is mostly about people that on these slides want not just the activity, but some text or think of a PowerPoint slide where they've got an image on one side and other text next to it. So if you're starting to load your slides in Mentimeter with things apart from the interactive activity, then you might want to consider using one of these different layouts. I don't use them personally because the reason I use Mentimeter is for the interactives, not for anything else. But that's what the layouts are getting at. You can increase text size. You can change the colors that are being utilized within the Menti. You can add backgrounds. This is all, I suppose, gimmicky stuff. And you can see here that someone's already from the response seen the instruction at the top that says you can go to menti.com and use this code to access it. So that kind of tells us already that even with 6 of us in here, this is so intuitive in terms of the information that's provided up front that people can sometimes engage without you doing anything. As long as they can see it, they can participate. We'll keep going now onto the interactivity section of our, do we want to allow people to respond? You can toggle them off if you don't want them to until you're ready, or perhaps it's reached its purpose and you don't want any more in there. You can certainly toggle that off. Multiple responses, yes or no? You could allow multiple responses, but you can also limit the number of responses. So for example, 3 or 4 responses, answers at once. So when I gave you the word cloud before, it allowed you to submit 3 responses at once, but it wouldn't let you go back in and do it again. So multiple responses, you have the ability to do it again. Answers each time, how many different fields they can contribute. All right, do we want to show the responses live or not? I generally do, but that's up to you. Some people don't like showing the instructions bar, join at menti.com, and there's the code. They don't want that at the top for whatever reason, and so they toggle off the instruction bar. There's also an opportunity to include a QR code, which sits this on the left-hand side. And if you're there live in person with an audience as well, for example, then they can all sit there and go start doing that. And before you've even uttered your second sentence, they're already doing it on their devices. So there are multiple ways to join Mentees. I've shown you 2, and believe it or not, they're not the most used ways of joining Mentees. So we've got the ability to use those. Then we've got a templating option over on the right-hand side where there is a bunch of pre-made templates underneath that you can scroll through to have a look and see if there are some ideas in there that you'd like to utilize. And you can also toggle off that template prompt at the beginning if you never want to see it again. But they certainly provide some different categories for you to look through if you're curious. All right, so we've created an activity. It is live, as I said, but there are some other options we need to look at. I'm going to close off the interactivity area. There's my preview. What I want to show you now is really important. It's the share section at the top of Mentimeters. This is where we get our information, our 2 pieces of critical information, our invite link, or our ability for participants to engage with the activity, and our results or our output. So the first thing that they have up there is you can toggle the participation with this. It's on by default. So I'm going to move past that. Here's our invite link, which you can copy. And then as I did in the Zoom session or Teams or whatever it is that you're using, you drop it into the chat, you stick it on a web page somewhere, and they can start voting or engaging with the Mentimeter activity as audience members. We saw that we had the ability to toggle on a QR code within the actual slides themselves. You can also get the QR code separately from here if you're going to provide that to them somewhere else. So you can get the QR code image and maybe you're putting that in hard copy materials or somewhere else. There's also a section underneath that talks about access code expiration. Now, what happens with Menti is this bit at the top here that says join@menti.com. Can you see that there? Is it visible enough? When people use these join codes, they have a limited life before a new code is automatically created. It's a bit strange for me, but when you provide people with the hyperlink, that never changes, which is kind of why I like giving either a QR code or a hyperlink to join Mentees rather than relying on them having that code, because it keeps updating and changing. You can extend the life of that code up to 14 days. So if you've got that instruction sitting above your activity, you can have it active for up to 14 days. And then it will just change on the screen. So where we can see it here with this number, in 2 days' time, there'll be a different number there. So it does automatically refresh. I don't really know why they've done that, except maybe to say if someone flogged your PowerPoint or your a picture of your Mentimeter activity, it wouldn't work for them after several days. So it might be an intellectual property type question, I guess, if they weren't the owner who had access to those other things. Personally, I mostly use the invite links when I'm working with Menti. QR code obviously has some other applications, particularly those of you that work in more student-facing areas, comms and things, and you're doing outreach type stuff. You probably use QR codes a lot more than I do. All right. So there's 3 tabs at the top of the share area. The first one, participants, is where we got our invite link. The second one, editors. I would say less important, but it does allow you to invite, when we say team members, we're talking about CSU people who have signed up for Mentimeter. So if they've gone to menti.com and signed in with single sign-on, they'll be in here. You can invite individuals to collaborate with you. They'll have equal access to these Mentimeter activities and be able to edit and change them. The distinction I would make here is, when I showed you, we'll open this in a new tab, that list on our homepage that had, let's make this a little smaller, CSU workspace presentations, shared ones, everyone has access to them in there and can copy them and do whatever they like. If I had made them within my own private account, but I wanted other people to have access to it, I would need to use this option, the collaborate option, and invite them in to work on my presentation. So it's 2 ways of sharing Mentees. Far and away the most important part here is the results area, where we can get a hyperlink, which will open the results to our word cloud, for example. So there it is, the results. I might be in a lecture theatre or wherever I am with them up on screen. And as people start voting, using the link, using the code, using the QR, for example, this will update and get bigger and bigger and bigger. The other option that we have for sharing the results, this will open the web page directly. We also have an option to get the embed code, embed live results. Now, this is more appealing really for people that want to create Mentimeter activities asynchronously. And I'll show you exactly what that looks like. In the Brightspace context, which I think Gemma and I were briefly talking about before, what that looks like is that we might have a content page in Brightspace where we provide the voting link and the embedded Mentimeter results window. And it would sit within the page. And at that point, students coming along to that page can see the link that they can click on to start voting and their live results updating underneath as they put them in. It's a bit bigger than that in the student view, but you get the idea. This means that you don't need a presenter at that point or a live person to monitor the activity. It's sitting there waiting for their input. And this is used very commonly, not just with Mentimeter, but with other tools in subject sites, with things like Padlet and other things, for students to come in and contribute to the activity in some way, and the results will update live on the spot. And you can see I have the ability to move through those different results that we had before, all embedded within the subject site. So you can use it either live with a presenter or not, basically. So what I'd got from there was copying the embed code and dropping it into the content area. You've got to change across to the code view. Would you like me to show you how to do that? Yeah, okay. Let's copy this. Let's make a new page, new HTML document page. Two pieces of information we're going to have on here. One of them is going to be the voting link. And the other one is where we're going to embed it. Now, what I normally do when I'm embedding anything in an LMS is I put what's called a marker in. I usually put in 4 X's when I do it. Now what I'm going to do, let me zoom in a little so you can see what I'm doing here. See this button here with the 2 arrows? This is the code button, the source code button in the Brightspace editor. If you hit this, I can now find my 4 X's. And if you've got a whole lot of text on the page already, you're adding it to a page with content already, you can just do a Control F in here and find the 4 X's because it's not going to be written anywhere else. Once it's there, they're already highlighted. I can drag my mouse over the top of the 4 X's. This is where I want the thing. And now Control V will paste my Mentimeter code that I just got. And I can save. And there it is underneath. Embedding these external objects into your content is really, really simple. You've just got to get around that idea of get the embed code, put in a marker within the text, switch to the code view and paste the code. That's it. That's it. Once we hit save and close, oh, I forgot to put in my voting link, but that's just a matter of pasting the URL up here at the top. Okay, so it's that easy to add in Mentimeter activities. So the difference that we had, oh, you're welcome. The difference that we had with our activity types is I just made a single slide interactive here. So I've only got one slide, one activity, and I give the link to the students. That's the only one they're going to get. The first one that we did this morning had 5 in a row. So I'd gone in and I went, right, new slide. The next one I want is ranking. Okay, it's added it underneath. I would now go through configuring this activity type. Oh, another slide. This time I would put in scales activity, whatever. Okay, so you can have as many of these as you like, and they would then need to work through each of those individual responses, and just also to move through the slides to be able to see the different result windows. That might not be what you're going for. If you just want them always to see the one set of results to their voting, for example, then you would only ever make single slide activities and then go and make another presentation with a single slide activity. That in that scenario, to Andrea's question before about the same link or not, it's going to be a different link each time when you make a new presentation. Jen Manning, you got the floor. Still muted. I don't know why.
I am. Yes, I am.
There you go.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Can you have all of these slides so that you can go, okay, so we'll just do this slide and is there any way that you can block the students from doing other slides until you're ready to go with that? Or if they've got that code, they'll just go through all the slides?
You absolutely can. And the term that the Mentimeter uses for this is presenter pace or audience pace. Now, the audience pace means they work through when they're ready to, and they can access all of them. Presenter pace means that you showing it on your screen until you hit the arrow to move to the next activity, they can't start it. They'll be stopped.
Like that.
They'll be stopped with their voting.
Oh, good.
Now,
thanks.
Whilst the facility is there, Mentimeter, like Zoom, updates its interface every couple of months, and they've moved the presenter pace option somewhere, and I was just looking for it before we started. So I'm just trying to find where it's hidden, but I will find it and let you know. But the term we're looking for, I'll put it in the chat here, is audience pace or presenter pace. That's the the setting that I'm looking for where we toggle that now. It used to be up here as part of the share options. They've moved it somewhere. So I've got to find out where it is.
Sorry about that.
No. I wanted to know where it was as well. It's very frustrating that it's not right here at hand. By default, it's on audience pace, which is why you're able to all move through each of the options in the Mentimeter activity. Yeah, I'll find it though for sure.
Thank you.
Let me stop there and see, has anyone got any other questions at this point? We're tracking pretty well, but I did say we'd look at Zoom polls a little bit.
Hi, I just want to confirm.
Sure.
So when we use the Mentimeter, we need to basically exit our, say, PowerPoint presentation and go into, while we're sharing screen, we're sharing the web, whichever web browser we use, and we go to the Mentimeter link. Or how do we do it? I guess my question is, how do you sort of segue from your PowerPoint presentation into a Mentimeter?
Okay, that's an excellent question. There are a few different ways that you can do it. One of them is the two pieces of information that we need with Mentimeter are the link for the audience to engage, a way for them to join the activity, and a way for you to show the results. Those are the two critical things we need. So if that meant on a PowerPoint slide that you just had the link to open the results window, you could click on that if you were at a lectern, for example, and open up the results so that they were all looking at the results, for example, whilst they were engaging with the activity. If you remember before when we created the activity, we also had a QR code available on the page and an instruction across the top that said join at menti.com, and it also had a join code. So you could just show this, having launched this from your PowerPoint slide, for example, and the audience would be able to join. You could provide the QR code to the audience in your PowerPoint
yes.
slide deck,
Yes.
for example, without having to move away from it yourself, and just tell them all, scan this and start voting, and then jump to your results window if that's when you're ready to do that as a part of your presentation. Some people, like I see that used at conferences quite often, where they'll get people to vote at some point in what they're presenting, and then at the end of it, they'll bring up the results and say, this is what you all did. So they're not really using it in a kind of, you're voting and at the same time you can see what the results are as they come in, but they have a timed sort of intention behind when they want to bring it in. But as long as you have a way for the audience to engage, whether it's by giving them the link, giving them the QR code, or giving them the instruction join code, that's what they need. What you need at some point is the results window.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Okay, great.
Lockie, I just had a look and I could be completely wrong, but when I went up to the little settings wheel, it says type of Menti. It's got presentation and survey, but the actual descriptions say that the presentation participants follow along and interact in a live presentation, and survey participants go through the Menti at their own pace. Is that actually what we were looking for in terms of the pace?
Would they have changed the name of the whole thing?
Yeah, but that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
You may be onto something.
You betcha. I bet they have.
Okay. This will be the third time that I've had to change the quick guide as well to accommodate the language around it. Yeah, okay. I thought survey, to be honest, was a new tool type that they were introducing that had different question types. But if it's simply renaming the pacing of it, that's very interesting. Okay, so you switch between how it's engaged with, whether it's survey and they can go through it. All right, Jen, you have a better answer than what I gave you, which is switch across to survey. Otherwise, they're going to rely on you having the live presentation open, the creator. Okay. So that means you need to switch to hitting the cog next to the title and changing it from presentation to survey. Wow.
Good job, Jenna.
Yeah, seriously, she's running it next time. Thanks.
Sorry, now that we found this different way of presenting, I have another question. So how can if I'm still in my PowerPoint presentation, I've got my QR code and I've got the link to the results. How can I move the slide forward for them? So how can I because you said that they can only go ahead if I press the arrow.
If it's in presentation mode,
Yep.
it will rely on you moving through the presentation yourself.
So then I
and
have to actually follow the link as well.
That's right. You would need to open the results window, right? So
The
if you,
results window.
that's
not
right. So
the
not the voting link, the results window. So this is a results window here, and if I moved through to the next slide, then that would allow the students to also access the next slide.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so
That's
that's
if
how.
it's in presentation mode.
Yes.
If
Yep.
you had it in survey mode,
Then
then
they
it
just
wouldn't
go
matter.
through
They
it
could go through it whether you're
themselves.
showing them or not. This sounds a lot safer to me. The other one is going to rely. I could see jobs being logged saying students can't participate with the second question in my Menti. Why not? And it's like it's going to be this every time.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
but if we click onto the next slide, then they go in and do that.
Yeah, they can, as long
activity.
as that's part of how you're going to do it. But a lot of people set it up with multiple activities and embed it somewhere, and then they're not there. They're not there live, ready to
Oh, they're
progress
not
it.
on the Menti site. They're
That's
on
right.
some other. Oh,
They
right.
would have just
Okay.
provided the link and the
Okay.
results in the LMS, for example, to
But
the
can't you
students.
flip from, say, you've got all your tabs open up the top there. So you go from what you're talking about on one tab to, yep.
You could do, sure. I guess for me, I don't want to have to think about whether I've made it self-paced or not. I just want it to work. So that's why
Ah, right.
I would
Okay.
probably be inclined, unless you have a very specific reason why you don't want them to progress to subsequent questions. And there are certainly use cases for that. Most of the time, I'm going to be going for survey.
Right.
Okay. So with that in mind, I've given you the quick guide for Menti, which does do a breakdown of all of the activity types as well. I'm going to need to update that document to talk about pacing and what it's called now at some point, but by all means, hang on to it until I give you a new one. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes. So I think what I want to do is show you Zoom polls, at least how to make them briefly. And then I'm happy to hang around for a bit if people want to talk about the Mentimeter a bit more. The present button up the top will launch the activity on the spot in a new browser tab. If we hit present, it just opens it up full screen. It would be the same as if you actually open the results window in another browser tab. It's exactly the same thing because the activity by default is already live. If you remember those options we looked at earlier, where we had the toggle to be able to stop people being able to respond, for example, then that might be a use case for you saying, oh, I'm not going to launch this until I'm ready to start presenting. But I think this is more from people wanting to use Mentimeter with a live audience at a particular occasion and not wanting to start it until a very set time. It's a little bit too micromanagey for me, to be honest. I'd be more like, created, it's live, it's ready to go, and I'll give them the link and off they go. Otherwise, you're introducing a whole lot of kind of checkpoints that you've got to remember before it's going to work properly. Okay, Zoom polls. Let's have a look at Zoom polls. If you go into the back end of Zoom, charlessturt.zoom.us and sign in, this is all very small text, Lachlan. Okay. Polls for Zoom are attached to individual meetings. They're not a setting that you can create in your menu over here that you can use in any meeting. They are attached to individual meetings when you make them. So if I turned around and opened up this sample weekly online meeting tutorial and went, okay, click on that link, more information, there's the join link, scroll down. There's not much going on in here. What if I edit the meeting, edit all occurrences, scroll down to the bottom, underneath options, right, there's my alternative hosts. I know what's happened here. Ignore me for just a moment. This is Zoom changing where its options are stored. Now, polls and quizzes are stored at the top. So when you go into the meeting information, you can hit a second tab called polls and quizzes, and you can create new polls here, or you can also see polls that have been used in that room in the past. and reuse them. But I'm not going to be able to use these polls in any other Zoom meeting, only in this one. It's a little annoying from my point of view because I'd like to create a poll that I can use across multiple different Zoom meetings. Let's go through the process quickly of creating a poll here. It allows me a few different question types. If I zoom in a little closer, single choice means what we would call multiple choice, where you can only choose one answer. So single answer. Multiple choice, in this case, means multiple response. So if you wanted them to be able to select more than one thing, that's what multiple choice means in Zoom language. You can do matching activities where they've got different options and they have to select which ones go with which. There's a ranking activity. So as we had in Menti, you had to organize which ones at the top and which ones at the bottom. Open response, this is by far and away the most common one that people use within Zoom because they want students to be able to have open response answers in here that they can collect. A longer form of open response. And if you can be bothered setting up sentences and paragraphs, etc., where students need to fill in the blanks, there is a fill in the blank option in here as well. I don't know many people that utilize that activity type in here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a poll. This time round, though, what I'm going to do is create it within our meeting here so that we can actually use it. And the only way to do that within a live Zoom meeting is I can't do it from the back end. If I'd done it in here before we started today, I could bring it and launch it in today's meeting. Because we're now in the live Zoom meeting, I can't create a poll from the back end. I've actually got to do it from within the live meeting. And as the host, I can come down the bottom to polls and quizzes. You can see that there's one in there, which I can launch that's been created previously. If I hit launch, it should now, inside our Zoom meeting, have prompted you with the ability to vote in this poll in the meeting. Can people see that? Yep. And as you start responding to that, I can see that it's updating in here. We've got two different question types. We've got multiple choice and we've got an open response that people can type into. When you launch a poll or a quiz in Zoom, the students cannot see the responses until you finish the activity. The reason you can see what's coming in here is because I'm sharing my screen with you. But when you do this with your students, they're not going to be able to see the responses until you end the poll. Right, so I can see as the person hosting it, the responses are coming in. 1 out of 5 have chosen the first one. 4 out of 5 have chosen the second. And then some people have started to put some things in underneath here with the long answer. If I hit end poll, I now have the option to share the results. And now you get them in the session. So you can see them. So that's the way that the Zoom polling feature works. As long as you're across, they're not going to be able to see those until you end the poll itself. I'll stop sharing that. But it is relatively simplistic, but it's also very quick to launch and get feedback from them on the spot. Gemma.
The results that I saw then showed me the poll results, but they didn't show me everybody's long answer. I mean, because there were 2 and I only saw 1. And it just said, your answer was. I don't know what happened for everyone else.
That suggests to me that the long answer questions, either it's something in the setup. Let's have a look. I can't change the setup because we're in a live meeting. So let me get this off the screen. If we were to make a long answer, which is what that one was. What do you blah, 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 blah. Okay, you can specify how long it is, whether it's required or not. What other options? There's no anonymity function here that I'm seeing. So I have a feeling that by default, Zoom polls and quizzes, irrespective of what activity type, will be anonymous, which means in an open response, they're not going to show you as well the other people's responses to the question.
I'm assuming that nobody else could see
other people's responses.
The responses.
Yeah, look, I will dig into that a little further, but it is ringing a bell. with the open response questions. If we shift it to short response, I also note that when I opened the polls option back there, it didn't allow me to create a new one on the spot, which is a bit different for me because I was sure that you used to be able to do that. Might be another change. Anyway, has anyone used Zoom quizzes or polls before at all? One of the benefits that you get to with the responses is that the data will go in the system as well in the Zoom backend, and you can get the report. You can get the responses in an Excel sheet. And as long as the people, well, remembering that a lot of people joining Zoom rooms come in as guests, so identifying who said what can be a little tricky if they're not putting their real names in. Yeah, Andrea, absolutely. It is a bit more complicated, but keep in mind that Mentimeter is completely anonymous. There's no function in there that's identifying who is saying what. So unless you're prompting them in their responses to somehow identify themselves, like if you were doing an open response in Mentimeter and telling them, please put your name in brackets before you put your answer in or something, you're never going to know who's responded with what. And that's intentional for them. They don't identify. But with the Zoom questions, if you were using them, you could get that Excel report from the back. If you're using the LTI, if I'm talking about LTI, I'm talking about inside the LMS within the Zoom tool itself. If you're launching polls or quizzes from meetings that you created inside the online meeting tool, and it'll open in just a second. Once the meeting is finished, you may be aware it moves across to the previous meetings tab. And as part of that list, it also gives you the report for that meeting. And the report in Zoom will give you the attendance list and all of the responses to any Zoom quizzes or polls that were put in as well. So you can bring up all of those responses from here, from within this tool, along with the recordings, obviously, that you're running from them, as long as it was created in here in the first instance. Jen Manning, go ahead.
So my other question about the recordings is, can you confirm if there is any way that we can check to see who has reviewed a recording in Zoom? And because at the moment I'm now putting the Zoom meetings into the Panopto recording into Panopto so that
you can see who's viewed it.
Well, I still can't see them in Panopto either, but it's more stable in Panopto, so I've put in the Zoom meetings into Panopto so the students can access them.
Yeah, look, it's a good question. The problem is not, I would say that there isn't a really effective solution for tracking views in the Zoom space. I'm not sure if you're familiar with in the Zoom backend that they have analytics against each of the recording types. Let me show you.
Do they?
And I'll stop the Mentimeter recording for today as well. Just stop that there.